Today we're going to be looking at building a stove in Creo. So on our Trinity site we have our stove illustrations. You'll need to download the PDF. Once you've downloaded the PDF, you'll be looking at a diagram like this. Now there are a couple of things you need to look at here. You can consider this as a base object that we're starting with, and if you notice the stove here, you can look at this view here. We're looking at our right view. There's a few ways you can draw this, but we're going to start off a fairly simple design. We're going to draw a rectangle in this shape here, which we know has a height of 900 and it has a total width of 650. Then we're going to extrude onto this surface here another feature, which we're going to draw on just as a line, which is going to have a height of 200. We're going to have a width of 50, and we're going to have a small dial that's going to be drawn on later on, small width out, and we're going to have an angle. Now you notice here we don't have any angles listed here, and we also don't show the height of this point here. We're going to take an assumption that's 100 high, which as you can see is roughly halfway, and we're going to come out half of this distance. We'll come out 25, and we're going to join these two intersecting points, and we'll be able to measure those out, get those done. Once we're finished on that, we won't draw any of these side objects here, but we will use some of the measurements, like the extrude here is 30, which represents the oven front. We'll then move on to drawing this part here with our dials across this face. You'll also notice we're not showing any widths here, but we do know that the total width here is 600 with 5 dials. So we'll try and make an approximation for those dials to sit across. We could be quite specific, and we'll show you how to position those across there. And then of course we'll finish off with our stove tops, which have a radius of 125 or a diameter of 250, radius of 75 or a diameter of 150. The center point being 180 in that direction, and this is from the front of the base here, 150 across here, and 445 from the top. So what we'll do is we'll open up Creo. Let's move this to the side. I'll refer to that document from time to time, and I'll open up Creo. Move that out of the way. We'll name this file stove. Keep it nice and simple. Remember, you can't have spaces in the file names. Close down the Resource Center page. We'll get rid of those messages. You can disable them from coming up. And we're going to go File, New, or if you've already got Home, we'll go New. Call this Stove. It's a part, using our default template, and go OK. Now it tells me I've already got a stove because I must have done this previously, so I'll call this Stove 2. And if we look at our drawing, that was drawn on the right view. So what we're going to do is go to Extrude. We're going to go on the right plane, and that rotates our object in. Now I'm going to start from the middle point and keep it there. It just makes my distances a bit easier to measure. So we have our reference line through the middle and our origin point through here. So I'm going to start by drawing a rectangle. So up to our rectangle, somewhere out here, just click and draw it and lock it down into the middle position. Click off. Then we're going to give this a little bit of height. So we knew our width was, I'm just referring to the drawing on the side of my screen here, on the side, 650, and our height of 900. Now it's obviously gotten a bit too big, so shift middle scroll across, and I'll zoom out a little bit. Zoom out, scroll, move in. So you may have to move out a little bit because we've made that object a little bit bigger. I'll just bring the drawing back in so you can see what I'm talking about here. If we bring that back in, we're now, let's make that a bit bigger. We're now going to be drawing this part. I'm just going to add some lines on very quickly, and I'll adjust the measurements. So remembering earlier, we spoke, our width here is 50, our height's 200, so I'm going to halve those. So we're going to come out 25, I'm going to come up 100, and we're going to draw a line through. Move in a little bit closer, drawing our line. We're going to lock onto that point there. We're going to come up. For the time being, it doesn't really matter how you do it. We'll fix up the measurements later. Come through, and come down just to try and represent our shape. Middle scroll click or click on the select tool to get rid of that. We get lots of measurements that pop up. If you remember, we had a few of them. So our total height from here to here was 200. So I'll put 200 in. That will make the adjustments for me. Shift middle scroll up so I can see what I'm doing. Our distance from here to here was half of 50. So I'm going to be putting in 25. So 25 and enter. And then we've got one other measurement. Now I can go from here to here. I could redraw it. I've already got this here. Half our height is 100. And if you look at our original drawing, I'm drawing it side by side. So I'll try and zoom in a little bit. So it's going to move that across. We see that that is now representing that figure there. I'll move that out of the way. What we need to do now is we cannot have these unfinished lines, so we need to use our delete segment tool, and we're just going to click on that and draw straight through the line. Once you've done that, you can go OK. Click and scroll to the side. You'll notice we've now got our stove appearance. Now obviously a stove doesn't look like that. Looking at our original drawing, we have a width across here of 600. So I'm going to go up to the top left, enter in my measurement of 600, go enter. I could have done it down here. There's a few ways you could have done that. Once you've done that, tick and OK, and we have our basic stove design created. We're now going to move on to some of the front parts, which is a bit trickier. We might start with the round dials, which is going to go across that edge. Sorry, before I do that, looking at those there, we know that that has a height or an extrude depth of 25. What we don't have here, if you look very closely, is our diameter or our radius of those circles. So we're going to take a little bit of a guess there to draw them. You can make those up as you go through. It's just not indicated on the drawing, and I'll give you a measurement that I want you to key in after I've worked it out. So we're going to go up the top here to extrude. We want to extrude onto that surface, so it should highlight green. Once it's highlighted green, click on that. It'll reposition. Zoom in a little bit by scrolling in, and we want to draw 5 circles, roughly. We'll go in the middle just for ease of use here, so roughly there. Draw it out, click once, click again, line them up, click, drag it out so the R's match up, and repeating. So it should lock into that center point, drag it out, and our 5th one, click and drag out. And we're done. Back to our select tool. We'll see our radius is 52.92. We're going to make this nice and easy and just go a nice even 50. As soon as you count it in, they all adjust and all have the same width across the screen. So our diameter now matches a 50. What we have to do is adjust our center points. You'll notice there's lots of measurements popping up here on the screen. So we've got quite a few here which indicate the distance from the edge. We'll try and keep it as simple as we can. If we look at our drawing originally, we know there's 5 of them. We'll try and space them out as even as we can. So looking across the screen here, we can see they're all bunched. They're even here. There's a larger gap on the side. So that means we have 1, 2, 3, 4 larger gaps and then 2 on the end. Our width is 600. So we have 4 in the middle. And we've got 600 and our diameter is 50. We know that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 has a total of 250, less our 600 leaves us with 350. So somewhere in here we need to adjust these depths. If we put in a figure of 100, you'll notice it moves in a little bit too far for what we need to do. If we go to 80, that looks more reasonable to what we had originally. We're looking at a lot of different distances here. We might just adjust these 2 outside ones here. If I follow that line back there, that will be that one there. Now we know if it's 80 distance and it's 520, actually 520 is the figure that we're after. So that was actually pretty close. I think that was just more chance than anything else. It's actually easier. 300, and we'll go 200. So we're just going to use some measurements there going across of 80. First one there, 200, then 300, then 400, then 520 to the last one, and that will give us our distances going across. Once you've done that section, we're going to move down to the stove front. So we're going to scroll down, let's just zoom out a little bit. If it rotates on the side like that, you need to reorientate. You can do that. We're going to go to the front. Sorry, that's my mistake. Let's just scroll up. Alright, we're going to extrude onto this one. Now we don't have all the measurements for this one either, so we're going to use the rectangle tool. But before we do anything, I need to actually finish what I was doing, which is come out here, and remember our depth was 25, which was the figure that was on the sheet. I'll just double check that figure is correct. That's correct, it is 25. Once you've got that, enter that in, and we'll tick that, and we've now got our little stove coming out. So we're going to extrude on this surface using our rectangle tool. We'll just draw it in, it doesn't really matter for the time being. Click and then click again. Using our select tool, we have some distances or measurements listed on the document here. So we know the width is 500 and our height is 600 and it's 250 off the base. So I've got that on the side so I can see those measurements. So 500, a height of 600, and we know that this distance from the bottom is 250. That is the first part of the drawing done. We'll tick OK, and if I rotate it, it's obviously too long, and our drawing also showed us that this extrude depth is 30. We'll go enter and tick that off, go OK and rotate it back. But we need to actually draw a part here that cuts into the surface a little bit. So what we're going to do is use our extrude again on this surface, our rectangle tool. We're going to draw it roughly in the middle here. Now, what I do know from my drawing is that that's at the midway point. If I look at the drawing here, I can see there's a line through here to indicate the halfway point. So I have a couple of measurements, but I don't have them all. What it doesn't indicate is the inner width of this here, or the distances from it. But I do know that it's got a 500 width, and I can take out some modifications to what I'm doing. So just using the select tool, I do know that that's 450 because that was indicated as the halfway point. We're going to use a nice round figure for our width of 400, and that's going to leave a distance on the sides. Here of that is 400 of 100 on either side. So let's go 100, and that should have now placed it nice and even, and we'll make that a nice round no, we'll go a little bit bigger. We'll go 250. That looks more like what we were looking at on our drawing. We know our depth when we cut out is 30. So when I rotate to the side, I've gone that way. I actually want it to go through the object, not all the way through, but just to a depth of 30. So I double click up here and go 30, and make sure it is on remove material. So tick that box if it's not been done. Go OK. We've now got the basics of our stove actually drawn on the screen. What we've got left to finish is the top surface, which is on this part here. So we go extrude, click on that surface, we'll rotate. So in here we're drawing a bunch of circles here with a couple of different radiuses. So at the moment we want these two to be in line and in certain directions. Let's begin by drawing the 4 circles. So we'll draw the first one out here, click, we'll come down here, we'll lock it in. Try not to draw them to the same, these are not the same distance, so just as long as you're in the same horizontal point, come out so it locks in. We'll lock that in as well, different radius, and then we'll come down here, same thing. So try not on this particular point to lock the radiuses in because we don't have an exact measurement for all of them other than these 2 circles here, but for the time being we're going to key those in manually. So as long as the R doesn't match, click off and go select. We'll manually make these adjustments. So this first one had a radius of 125, which means our diameter was actually 250. So it's actually quite a big one. We'll do our second one, which I'm going to take a guess is the same as this one, which means our radius was 75, so our diameter is 150. Same down here. And this last one, I don't actually have the radius. I do know it's slightly smaller. I'm going to take a guess of, I'll go 180. That seems like a good measurement. What we can now do is make some adjustments to the heights and distances from the edge. So this first one we were given, it's 180 out from the edge. So we put in 180 and that aligns both of those. The other one is 180 from the other distance. Now you could redraw the lines by using the normal tool. You've done that in our other tutorials from here to there. We've already got this measurement. We knew our total width from here to here across is 600. So let's just take 180 away from 600, which gives us a measurement of 420, which then moves those into the correct position. What else have we got to work out on this one? Okay, we have our heights. So again, the depth from here to this front edge here is 650. We're indicated on our drawing, so we see, let's bring it back so you can see it. So 650, we're looking at it that way. Our first one from the front is 445 to line up there, and then we've got 150. So we can obviously work the other way with a bit of mathematics. If we put in our distances coming from the back line for this first one, is indicated as 150 from that 650, we're looking for a measurement of 500. We've got our first one done. Our second one, I'm just trying to spot it on the screen. Yep, it's that one there. So it is it's 445 from that front edge on the first screen. So if we do the quick maths on that, we have 205. If I quickly do that in my head. Yes, that's the correct distance. So we've got 205. Once we've got that, we've got the basics of our design actually drawn. That looks very much like what my drawing is looking at. And we knew the height of these was 30, which was indicated on the drawing. So 30, we're not removing material. We're leaving it as it is. Enter. Rotate that up, and that looks very much like what we've got. We'll tick that button. Zoom out a little bit, and you'll notice that we now have our stove. It looks very much like, so I'll just bring up the color drawing here. Now of course we can go through and color it. I might just color it just to show you what you've actually got to do. We'll go to the render tool, go to appearance. I'll choose any color for now. We might go with a blue. Sounds like a good choice. So holding down the shift key just to select a few different things. And our color is that we're looking for is blue. I don't want it all to be done. That's not quite doing it. Try that again. Blue. That surface blue. That surface blue. That surface blue. Let's double check that. There we go. There's my paintbrush tool. So as that paintbrush comes up on a surface, you can click on it, and as you've got that middle scroll click, and what is supposed to happen is it will actually change the color of what we're working with. Slowly changing. Color, and we'll get this back surface here. It's not giving me the selection tool. There we go. And oh, that looks pretty good actually. You then need to adjust some of these things here. It is grey. Try and get a grey that looks a bit better. That looks like our grey. That will do. We've pretty much got it there. So remember, it's to go up there. Ideally, we're trying to get our tool to come up. Once you've selected it, hidden up in the corner is our OK button, which you could select on. Usually it's the middle scroll. You shouldn't have too many problems defining that, and if you look there, we've pretty much built our stove as per our diagram. Just take a moment to think about the distances from these objects here, and obviously with our colouring and our depth, and try and get it as close as you can. And later on we'll be able to practice maybe adding our name on, which is a nice little activity to do.